Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. This is a quote from the letter from Birmingham jail written by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and published by several newspapers, including the New York Post and Liberation magazine in 1963. Dr. King had been arrested in Birmingham, Alabama in April 1963 after defying a state court order and leading a march of demonstrators without a permit. They were calling for an Easter boycott of white-owned businesses. His letter was a rebuttal to 8 moderate white preachers who published their opposition to the march and accompanying rallies in a statement published in the Birmingham News. His plea for constructive, nonviolent tension was a way to abolish unjust laws, and it became a key manifesto in the civil rights struggle. The letter from Birmingham jail is an important historical document. I remember reading it for the first time many years ago in my Rhetoric of Race Relations class as an undergrad. I also remember learning about this minister, Dr. King, and his tenacity at insisting that the sacred and the political are in fact intertwined. This reading back then was the first time that I was faced with the realization that my learning to speak more politely and not talk about secular problems in my Sunday school class was a result of me being brought up in mostly white churches. You see, there, salvation was a heavenly matter, and secular topics were not for the pulpit. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's was often the misplaced scripture quote that would be used should I or anyone else bring up matters that were not for church time. However, here was Dr. King, this pastor even, fully engaged in a secular political engine that for so long I considered off limits. This was a new model to me of how to be human. Could it be that living my faith values authentically might mean in every aspect of my life, sanctuary and the streets, and not just on Sundays? I am very grateful for my professor, Dr. Keith Jenkins, and his tutelage over the years. It is also amazing to have found Unitarian Universalism, which I believe promotes this concept of living our values out loud from the sanctuaries into the streets. For me, Dr. King's quote fits well within the framework of Unitarian Universalism. It reminds us that each of us are importantly individual. That's our first principle, after all. And it also reminds us to call us into covenantal relationships that honor the fact that our individual lives are tied into the web that is intricately woven, our 7th principle. Now, contrary to some, I do not see these two principal values in opposition to one another, but ideally in equilibrium. Perhaps the overemphasis of the first principle without a counterbalance to the 7th is problematic in our faith tradition and liberalism as a whole. COVID, after all, has taught me that I can't always rely on my fellow humans, as they sometimes overvalue themselves at the expense of the community as a whole. I think this is something that Dr. King's lived experience instilled in him. In celebration of our interconnected lives today, we are really thrilled to welcome to our congregation the Reverends Will McGarvey and Julius Van Hook. Reverend Will is the executive director of the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County, and Reverend Julius is the interfaith chaplain serving the juvenile youth who are incarcerated in Contra Costa's jail. All of the programs offered by the Interfaith Council are ways in which we practice the interdependence of our individual lives. I believe that if we participate, we can actually learn and grow into a more beloved community. Today and tomorrow, we have already uplifted 3 potential events where you can also engage in beloved community building. Tomorrow, in honor of the Dr. King and his family's wishes to not celebrate his legacy, but rather uplift the threat to our democracy and voting rights that are currently happening across our country, we will gather in a silent public witness at the corner of Civic and Broadway from 11 to 12. This same effort is going on at a national level across the country. Also available, as you have heard today, are 2 opportunities for engagement further. The 8th principle discussion that will be happening from 1:30 to 2:30, and then our virtual hour of action, where you can come and in very small but meaningful ways, connect spiritually with others and work for justice in the larger world. And that's from 3 to 4. I really hope you consider joining us for one of these opportunities to promote change within our community and more broadly. I'm so grateful that I am no longer part of a faith tradition that believes I am only a person of faith on holy days. This is the place I come, not only to be supported, but also to be challenged to move my heart and my head into the future. I do not believe there is separation between the sacred and the secular. Dr. King reminds me that this one precious world is complicated and entangled in a web of mutuality that isn't so easily untangled. We see this even in how we are gathering for worship today. Some of you are joining us in our interactive YouTube channel forum, and I'm inviting all of us, no matter how we are engaged with this service, to keep our values in our heart and mind, and think about how we intend to move our values from the sanctuary to the streets. In fact, I would like to think about a specific action that you are willing to take to demonstrate this kind of solidarity and mutuality, especially given that our democracy and voter rights are threatened. So my question for the YouTube channel interactive chat and for your discussion at home is, how will you live UU values in a way that uplifts mutuality? I invite you to share these important thoughts in our live YouTube channel or with a person who is dear to you in your personal life. For now, I want to leave us with one other quote from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from a commencement speech to Oberlin College in 1965. All I am saying is simply this, that all of us are tied together. All life is interrelated, and we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of identity. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what I ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. On this special day, come, let us worship and learn to be together.